Hi there, this is Robert Bailey, and I'm excited to be joining Scott and Teresa this week on One Final Twist.
All right, this week on One Final Twist, we are joined by Robert Bailey, a practicing attorney turned novelist who brings authenticity to these legal thrillers, fast-paced fiction, grounding high concept plots, the messy, very messy reality of power, loyalty, and often, more often than not, I think, moral compromise. Today, we're going to talk about the newest book, The Mediator, and I will do my best to stay off of the boomerang. Okay. But I loved it too. So since we didn't get to talk to you for that one, I may have to throw a little bit in there.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about the boomerang a little bit.
Okay,
Um, Before we get started with a lot of questions, do you want to tell us and the listeners about the mediator, kind of the overall concept
sure.
of
So
it
the
and what it's
mediator
about?
features a character named Max Ringo. Max is a an attorney who has trying to make a comeback as a mediator. She's had some tragedy in her life, and she's kind of a victim of the opioid crisis. Had a car accident, got hooked on painkillers, and kind of lost her life in the process. She has a son and is divorced from her husband. And she is caught in this mediation between these two power players in Huntsville, Alabama, a very wealthy CEO of a government contracting company and his wife, who's the matriarch of Huntsville's, oldest and biggest family and biggest landowning power. And the husband is trying to do and complete a merger with a group called the Syndicate, which is a this sort of shadowy group in the background of the story that's trying to have eyes on Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville. It's an espionage play, and so the husband has to have this merger go through, which could mean billions of dollars to him. But if he doesn't have it go through, then they're going to kill him. And so he basically kidnaps Max's son to make sure that she will mediate the case on his terms and settle the case on his terms, which puts her in this impossible situation, race against time. She has 3 days to settle the case. Her son's been kidnapped, all the while trying to remain on the straight and narrow. And this is literally one of the first big things she's done since, coming back to the practice of law and specifically mediation.
What was the original nugget for this story?
So I think for me, I have sort of transitioned out of practicing law myself into doing mostly mediation work. I'm actually at my mediation office right now. And, that is an area of the law that really hasn't been explored, I think, at all, really, in contemporary fiction. And so I thought it would be interesting to set a story around that. And when I started thinking about how I could do this and make it and interesting and pulsating. Most mediations take place over the course of 1 or 2 days. So the time barrier thing was already going to be a part of it. And I just thought it would be interesting to insert a character who has such an incredible personal stake in it, which is Max. And I've never had like a true female hero. I've had like characters, obviously strong supporting female characters, but I thought that in this story, I just always saw the hero as being Max Ringo, and it was going to be a woman character, and which I thought a mother's devotion and love for her son would be a strong pull for me writing the story, and also hopefully for the readers that read it. And so, just you always try to do something new, and I just thought this was unexplored territory for me, both character and plot wise. So I thought it would be fun. And also, I haven't set a whole story in my hometown, Huntsville, Alabama, and this particular story with the government contracting angle, the arsenal, the urban setting, and also the rural settings that surround the town. It just makes for, I think, a neat setting for the story. So all those factors kind of came into play.
Yeah, Huntsville's one of those interesting towns. You've got, the Space Center there, and you've got all the government work, Redstone. I mean, like I said earlier, I've fished at the docks of Redstone.
Right.
I've caught fish there, and it just a thought. And we see the rocket ship on the river. It's this
Right.
gigantic boat thing, and it's impressive going down the river, and it's all based out of Huntsville. Because there's so much. government work in Huntsville with the arsenal and other things that are there. I think you did really well with the whole choosing Huntsville for what a lot of people probably don't know Huntsville is known for.
Right.
Um,
It really is, especially right now with what's happening with the Golden Dome and the hypersonic missiles. I mean, it just that wasn't planned by me, but it just kind of happened to where it even became more of an interesting setting for those reasons. And of course, the story is about the mom and the son and the people involved in it. But having a setting, I think, that's authentic, that creates a little enhanced fear once you know what it's all about is very helpful. I think I use that a lot with the Gunnersville books and Jason Rich and the Lake and Sand Mountain, and I think Huntsville brings a lot of that with this particular story and the elements of play.
and also with Max, I don't want to give too much away, but she's a bear. And you poke a sleeping bear, and you know how a mother bear will protect her children,
Right,
her cubs rather. That's Max. She's
right.
tough. She is a bad. I don't want to curse, but she's a bad one.
She sort of
Uh,
rediscovers who she is through the
yeah,
story and through the uh, the adversity.
How did you pick? So she's flawed. We know that she is a recovering addict from the opioid crisis, and that's touched every corner of the world right now. But how did you pick what was going to be her nemesis, or what took her down?
I just thought it was timely. I think a lot of people are going through that. Right now with that particular type of a drug, and I didn't want to. I've kind of given in the Jason Rich series. He has his demons, and it's always interesting. I think when a character has personal demons, and I thought with Max particularly, I thought the fact that she had no control over really what happened to her. She's in a car accident. She's the passenger. All this bad stuff happens. She's having to recover from that, and I wanted her backstory to kind of be one of sort of overcoming things she couldn't control and now trying to control it as best she can. And it just, to me, then she gets in this impossible situation, and I just think it amps up the drama when the person's not just fighting the villain but also herself.
in the book, Max gets a little help from one of Jason's friends. I don't want to give too much about him away, but where did he come from? Where, he's one you want on your side. I mean, he's one of them people,
I think that particular character and those brothers have been so special to me because they weren't like planned. When I
Yeah,
was writing Rich Blood in the Jason Rich series, the first book there, Jason gets midway through the story. He's getting wore out by the Sand Mountain Meth King, and he just needs some help. He's not equipped to handle these types of people. And so I had mentioned that he had some crazy neighbors that were ex-military. And there was something really magical that happened when I wrote the scene where Jason walks across Mill Creek Road and the smoke's going up over the house, and he sees the colonel. This magical thing happens where the colonel sort of becomes a scene stealer. Every time he's in a scene,
yeah,
he kind of steals the scene. And the relationship between him and Jason is probably my favorite part of the Rich books. And so what I wanted, anytime you do something new, I think if you can just sprinkle a little something comfortable and old that people love,
exactly.
I know the readers love that character and I do too. And so I wanted around that time when Max is kind of really struggling to give kind of a pop to the reader, like, wow,
Yeah,
okay, here we go. And I thought that what an odd couple that they are. Max is and the Colonel, even more so probably than Jason and the Colonel. And so I just thought that would be an interesting dynamic to play with. And I think people love and I love stories where sometimes you have to use a Yellowstone term, train station justice. The
exactly.
law just isn't going to get it done. And here you've
Yeah.
got all these people playing outside the law.
Yeah.
And so Max needed some of that here,
Yeah.
and so that's what the Colonel brings.
I've not yet read the Rich series. I have them on my bookshelf back here. Uh, I really hope to get to them because the Boomerang and was one of my top books from last year. and the Mediator is right up there this year. Um, I want to talk just a smidge about the Boomerang.
Sure.
Um, you've got it's big pharma, national security. Will you ever go back to the world of um, the Boomerang, where the is it Eli? What was Eli the main character in
Eli,
Boomerang?
Eli James, yeah.
Yeah. Will we ever go back to the world of Eli?
So I want to. I would like to go back and certainly planted a few seeds at the end of the book to allow for further stories. The Boomerang to me felt like just like a big book. Like, it's not like a series. To me, like when I go back to it, it will be, I hope it will feel, not to sound like melodramatic, but I hope it will feel like a true sequel, like the Boomerang Part Two, like the Godfather Part Two, kind of a big sort of let's return to that universe and see what Eli and Nestor are doing over here and what Lionel is doing over here, almost like an arms race to see who gets it out there first. And
Yeah.
I think that could be really fun. And but when I mentioned it to my editor, she liked the idea too. But there is a sense of that we really stuck the landing with the Boomerang, and you
Yeah.
don't want to screw it up, with a sequel because it just felt so right the way we finished it. And that's always kind of a fear of mine is I don't want to mess up something that finished so in my mind so well. So
Okay.
I felt like the Boomerang for me was an emotional read, and I don't know if it's the parent in me or like what I all I kept thinking is what would I do to get these answers? How far would I go? What if I had that kind of power? It was one of those if what like, but I think the emotion carried me through that book because you never really know who to cheer for because there's no really right answer to what you do or what secrets you hold. Oh, that book just that, it carried me the emotion through the book carried me, I guess is what, and I think maybe it's the parent in me. I don't know what I would do.
right. Well,
the
thank you.
and also too, the side characters in your side characters are very entertaining. I mean, you've got Eli's mom she's a hellraiser. She
She's
reminded
my
me of my
favorite.
mother,
Yeah.
and it was your sidekick, like, and the colonel, and they just add such depth and character to the story. You do a great job with your side characters.
Well, thank you.
I have a question back to the Mediator. Did you know it was going to be a series when you started? Because I didn't until I went to write my review and it says book one on the thing on
Yeah,
NetGalley. I was like, what? It's going to be a series, which I'm glad. But I wonder, did you all always know?
I did know. I don't know how many like books it will be. I think in my head there's probably three, and I had an idea of what I wanted to explore in the series before I started book one, which sets up kind of the surprise, the final twist, no pun intended, of the book
Yeah,
sets up the series in a way. And I don't want to
yeah.
spoil anything for readers, but that is something that I hope will be shocking and surprising and will set up the second book and possibly even the third. So that was always in the back of my mind, and trying to do that in a way that doesn't come off as arbitrary and kind of cheesy is one of the things that you really play with in editing. You want it to come across as a wow, I didn't see that coming, but that particular character will be explored more in book two, and I wanted to lay enough clues in the first book so that when it happens it's a big moment, and then the hopeful question is I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah.
That's what you want in a series, is to kind of leave it to where readers can't wait to get back to that character. And
When
Max is a character with a lot of meat on the bone in terms of like
yeah.
problems, and moving forward there's a lot to unpack, even after the end of it.
What is your process? Are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you or a both?
So I started out as a pantser. When I wrote The Professor, I was a pantser completely. And that book was basically the book that taught me how to be a writer, and I'm glad that I started out that way, although in some ways I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Every writer's got to find his path. And it took me a very long time. I think as a pantser, you get on tangents that are fun, and sometimes they don't end up connecting to the plot, and you have to kill your darlings when you're editing. And so, what's happened to me since The Professor is now what I do, and this is publisher driven. The publisher wants a kind of a general synopsis of what the next book is going to be. And I think at first I hated that, because it was felt limiting and sort of tightened me up. But now I kind of like it because it gives me a general roadmap for the story, but enough room to take a dirt road if I want to walk across Mill Creek Road and have introduce a new character. Or in the Boomerang, when Eli starts to investigate, he needs an investigator. I had just been to Fairhope for a book signing, and the next thing I'm in Fairhope in the story, and Fonzie James appears, and it's a magical moment. And I feel like you have to let the characters kind of explore on their own, but I feel like having a general roadmap is helpful when I get stuck. Like where am I going with this? And I can look back over here and think, well, this is where I thought I was going. So how can we get back over here? And so that helps me stay on track a little bit.
Did you have a favorite character to write in the Mediator? And then maybe which one did you want to wring their neck the most?
Sometimes it's fun to write the villains, and and I think in the Mediator, Stephanie Strasberg's father, Dagger, is a big part of the story in terms of plot movement, and he was a fun character to write because he's clearly, ambivalently moral. He's got in term he loves his daughter. He's done some awful things in his life, and so I think when you have a character like that, I feel like I hope readers will still kind of feel a little sorry for Dagger as the story goes on, even though he's kind of a bad guy. And so writing a character like that can be fun. I really enjoyed Max. Max is new for me in terms of just she's got some new things going on, and it was fun to get into her world and to bring a mediation to life on page, which I've never done before. And she was a medical malpractice defense lawyer, which is what I did before I retired. And and the office in the story is very similar to where our office was. And so some of the writing of that was kind of going back home for me. And so I enjoyed that part a lot. And I'm not really answering your question. I'm doing what lawyers do. I'm dancing all around it. But I mean, of course, I love writing the Colonel scenes because, he's just a fun character.
Yeah.
I always love introducing a character like that. So
when I was reading Dagger, rather, I'm sorry, I kept picturing J.R. Ewing. That was the character
right
in my mind that I see Larry Hagman, and
yeah.
I was raised in the 80s, and
Me too.
Who Shot JR was, that was we're in the South, and we had 3 channels, and that was it. We didn't
Right,
have
same.
any cable back then. And I kept saying, yeah, this is J.R. Ewing right here. He's fixing to get shot, But that was one of the he just resonated that you can connect with those kind of characters from TV shows of the past.
Certainly, Dagger has probably got some JR in him in terms of the way he talks and the way he thinks of family and his morally ambivalent attitude about life. And it's funny, just a side note, I'm the same. I grew up in the 80s, 3 channels. We watched Incredible Hulk, Dukes of Hazzard, and Dallas, and then when they changed and stuff. And so Dallas was just something my parents watched, and so I watched it too. And so it's really been a subconscious influence on me as I've been a writer. In the Rich series, one of the quirks of the Colonel is that he loves 80s TV shows, and Dallas is his favorite show.
I've definitely got to get those books read, because if there's more of the Colonel out there, I really want it. I've got to have that.
He's all over the Rich books. So
good. And Gunnersville to me is one of the most beautiful areas in the whole state, in my opinion, of Alabama. You've got the mountains.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a video of a black bear swimming across Gunnersville. You know, there's always so deer. I mean, it's just a beautiful part of the state, and
Yeah.
it's I think it's almost an unknown or hidden gem
Right.
because if you don't fish, you don't really think about Gunnersville,
Yeah.
but it's such a beautiful, beautiful part of the state. That river and the lake is just absolutely gorgeous up there.
I agree. Yeah, I love setting those books there. And children, two boys in college, one's at Alabama, one's at TCU. And so the last few years we've been traveling to their college functions, when they have parents weekend or dad or mom's weekend. We have an eighth grade daughter, and so family takes up a lot of my time in a good way. And I enjoy playing golf. Golf is I don't play as much as I used to. I wrote a inspirational novel called The Golfer's Carol after my dad died, kind of a tribute to him.
Oh.
And so golf, this is Masters Week, and I always think about that story. But I I like to take long walks, because it helps me with my writing and clears my head, and it's just good for you. But I love to watch movies. We took the family to see Project Hail Mary on Saturday night. I don't know if y'all have seen that. It's fantastic. And
I have not yet.
still enjoy that, just being in a theater and eating popcorn, and just brings back nostalgia of being a kid. And so that's probably it.
So you're not at the Voodoo Lounge?
I've been to the Voodoo Lounge a few times before, and I'm not above going there. It's a neat little watering hole, but I don't do a lot of that.
So you kind of touched that you've written a few other things, but you're the master of the legal thriller, and the Mediator is just another branch in the legal thriller genre. Is there a genre that you would like to put your toe in and write, say, historical romance or anything like that? Or are you going to always stick with legal?
That's a good question. I love to read thrillers of any kind.
Yeah.
I've even before I started writing, I was a huge Grisham, Thoreau, Sandra Brown. I love Harlan Coben, and just fast moving stories that put real people in impossible situations have always been things I've enjoyed. I enjoy inspirational stories. The next book I'm going to write, which is an inspirational novel, which will be the second one I've done, and I really enjoy that kind of story because it's just a little different, and you kind of put people in difficult circumstances, and there's kind of a maybe lessons too strong a word, but hopefully a message of hope, throughout the
Yeah.
story, and it's kind of a way to do that. And I like to read stories like that, and so I'll enjoy writing it. As far as something completely new, I am drawn a little bit. I don't know that I'll ever have the courage to do it, but I love world building. I enjoy creating, like in my legal thriller world, there were the Professor books and the Bo Cephas Haynes books and the Jason Rich books and now the Max Ringo books. And they are all different and feature different characters, but there is some intersection. And so it's the same big world. And so,
Yeah.
like, Bo Cephas Haynes makes a cameo in Rich Waters, and in Max Ringo, book one, the Colonel and Jason Rich both make cameos. And so I love that kind of stuff. And so I think the fantasy sci-fi type realm would be a fun, if I could think of the right world, I think that would be a neat segue that might sort of, I don't know, refire some neurons and be something completely different.
Yeah.
But I don't read a lot in that genre, so I would have to do my homework.
Do you find your fans love when your characters from other books make those cameos? I love finding them.
Yeah.
So I do think that, and I've always loved that. Like I was a huge Greg Iles fan who we lost last year, and his Pen Cage series I really liked. But then he'd write a book, and I can't remember all the titles, where Pen Cage would be a supporting character, would just make a cameo, or one of the main characters in another book would come into one of Penn's books. And to me, that's just such a charge because it's an Easter egg. It's like a way to connect with the reader beyond the page if you know who that character was in the other story. And so I love doing that. I've always enjoyed that in reading other people's works. And so it's important to do it in a way that it really fits, and when it
Yeah.
really fits. And I think with the Colonel in the Mediator, to me, it was like the perfect time to do that. It can really be fun, and I think it's a crowd pleasing thing. And I think when somebody's invested money to read your story and you can give them a reason to smile and be happy and their heart flutters a little bit, I mean, that's winning for me.
And I've noticed too in your, we're not going to talk about the Mediator. I don't want to give too much away, but in the Boomerang, because hopefully a lot of people have read it, you kill side characters. Um, you don't you have no mercy. I mean, you'll just take one out. And I was like, okay.
I have I have done that a few times, and sometimes I regret it. Like there's a character in Between Black and White. My second book, uh, and his name was Ray Ray Piccolo. He was the local council they used, and Ray Ray was a scene stealer, and I really miss him. I wish that he was still around, but I needed to create some real drama at the end of the story, and he kind of sacrifices for another
Ah,
character. In the Boomerang, same thing. I needed to show that these Project Boomerang folks and General Randolph weren't messing around. And the
exactly.
best way to do that is to off a character that maybe you don't necessarily need to get to the end. And so I definitely did that a few times.
Yeah. When I read that one scene, I was like, "Oh my, oh gosh, we just did that." And
yeah,
yeah, do you your books too are very they read cinematically. So is there any possibility that they may see another medium as in the future?
there are. I mean, we have a lot of my agent calls them shots on goal. We have a lot of shots on goal right now, and a lot of irons in the fire in terms of that with all of the books. And you just don't know which one is going to be the first one to make the leap. We've had a lot of flirtation. We got a long way with one group before the writer strike happened, and then the actor strike, and that kind of messed that deal up. And so
Yeah,
we've been very close, and I feel like particularly with legal shows now, with the Lincoln Lawyers success, and with the Matlock reboot, and with the Presumed Innocent reboot, a lot of reboots of old, famous stories. I feel like there's room. Suits became popular on Netflix, and
yeah,
so I feel like my stories would fit the people that enjoy those on TV, and certainly feel like the Boomerang would make a fun movie. I
yeah,
just kind of feel like the timing has to be right, but I'm
yeah,
hoping once the dominoes fall, we'll have some things happen in that area. It would certainly be a dream come true if it would.
yeah. There, the a Southern legal drama is just to me the chef's kiss. We had one in Memphis a few years ago. It didn't even last the whole season, but it was so good. Um, the gentleman from NYPD Blue, I think, was in it. Hispanic man.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I can't think of it. But anyway, it's
Give you
Southern.
Smiths.
Jimmy Smits, that's right. And I live in between Memphis and Nashville, and they filmed part of it and set part of it in the town just up the road from my house. And that's
Right.
just interesting to me that you can,
Yeah.
but Southern fiction. I mean, to me, just I may be a little biased because I am from the South, but I do love reading and watching stuff based in the South. That's just
I
me.
do too. I think it's an untapped kind of thing. I think what Taylor Sheridan has done,
Yeah,
bringing to life towns like Tulsa with Tulsa King, and Midland, Texas with Landman. I think that the same could be done with Gunnersville or Huntsville or
yeah,
Tuscaloosa, and it could be done really well because you have a setting that's more contained and you can really get into it as opposed to just massive Los Angeles or New York, which is so
yeah.
big. It's hard to, I mean, they've done it. I love the Lincoln Lawyer, the way they do LA there, but I think, what Sheridan has done with some of his stories, I just
Mm,
feel like you get a little bit more juice because the place is smaller.
yeah.
So you talked about these other fictional legal series. If you could argue against one of them in front of a judge, who would you do? Who would you want to argue against?
Oh, which lawyer would I choose to argue
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
no, again, I want you, like, if you could go against one, who would you want to go
who
against
would
the,
I want to go against as an
yeah.
opponent?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I think you've got it's almost you have to do like Tom McMurtrie is this legendary law professor, iconic figure. He's going to be hard to lose in front of a judge. A motion, Bo Cephas Haynes is a total, just courtroom assassin, very good. Um, Max Ringo was great in the courtroom before she has her accident. And then you got Jason Rich, who's this, kind of, con man sort of. He has all these billboards. He settles all these cases, and then he becomes a lawyer in the series. He really starts as someone who's never tried a case and just settles cases, and then by the end, he's really an accomplished, lawyer. So I think probably if I had to choose one of those four to go against, it would probably be Jason because he's probably the least experienced of the four. But it might even depend on like I probably would rather choose. I don't know that I'd want to argue against Jason in Marshall County. Sometimes in Alabama, it's kind of county specific. You don't want to argue against, the professor in Tuscaloosa or Bo Cephas Haynes in Pulaski. But if it was on a neutral field, I'd probably choose Jason just from an experience standpoint. I think I'd have a better chance of winning. In terms of like just the moment of being able to argue against an iconic figure, I think probably I would choose Tom there just because he's the professor, wrote the book on evidence in Alabama. He was, inspired a bit by my father. That would be kind of special for me.
I know you're with you being a lawyer, and you probably don't have to do a lot of research because it's all up in here with you. Is there anything you've ever discovered while you were doing some research, maybe a location or something like that, that really surprised you? That was like a boom! Wow, I had no idea that was there, or that fact
Yes.
was about there. What was
Yes.
that?
So in Between Black and White, the second McMurtrie and Drake book set in Pulaski, Tennessee, and it is kind of around a capital murder trial, and where Bo Cephas Haynes is charged with murder. And the character of Helen Lewis she's the district attorney general, the district attorney. And so as I'm an Alabama lawyer, and the case is set in Tennessee, so I contacted a friend of mine who's a Tennessee lawyer just to get kind of the landscape. I wanted to make sure. Just I didn't want to have a capital punishment case in Tennessee and then not have the death penalty, that kind of stuff. And so I cover all those things, anything different, where people stand in the courtroom, how they address the court, all these different questions. And then right as we're leaving, almost as an aside, he says, "Oh, by the way, one last thing. When the DA is in the courtroom, everybody refers to the DA as general. Like, they have to address the district attorney as general." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." Like, I couldn't believe that. And for my character, who is Helen Lewis, who's this ruthless, like incredibly smart, sort of mean, always wears black, woman, the title of general was just literary gold for me because everybody calls her that throughout the story. Even outside the courtroom, they call her,
Oh yeah.
just general. And
Uh-huh.
so it really was a wonderful surprise. Like, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so that has happened once for me. I can't really think of anything else like that that was just so like amazing to the story. I think more likely, I'll wake up at night wondering if I've made some kind of technical mistake of something I haven't researched,
Yeah.
and so you worry about that sometimes
You
too.
see,
Because
see, me being from Tennessee, that I knew that. My
yeah,
sister is a paralegal, and they talk about general this and general that, but if the DA is general, I mean,
right,
and even when they do an interview on the television, they put the name at the bottom, they'll have General so and so, and I was like, they're really not a general. It's just a
yeah,
salutation almost.
My friend that told me that sent me a motion that a criminal defense lawyer had filed asking to be called Captain Justice throughout the trial because he thought it was prejudicial for the jury to think that the district attorney had a military bearing.
Yeah.
The motion was
Oh,
denied, but I thought the creativity was pretty cool.
yeah. And Teresa, if you want to, we're not going to talk about it on this, but if you want some interesting nuggets of history, look up Pulaski, Tennessee. Robert will probably know what I'm talking about, but there's a
Yeah,
lot of deep roots in Pulaski. It's just across the border, basically from Alabama.
yeah,
But there's a lot of history in Pulaski, Tennessee.
yeah.
Uh,
And some of that's covered in my stories. And again, I pick settings so that the setting can almost be a character, and I
yeah.
think that it's helpful when the setting has kind of an explosive background. So
What book or books, like when you were reading, did you, this is kind of multi question. So did you always know you wanted to end up writing? And then what books inspired that, or what author inspired that?
I took to reading kind of slow. We started reading in the first grade when I was coming up, and it wasn't really till the end of the first grade that the light bulb went off for me. And it went off around the time that I started reading the Bobbsey twins. Did y'all read the Bobbsey twins when you were a kid? And so I think fiction was synonymous with me learning how to read. Like I still remember, I still have them. It's like the set of green, like Bobbsey twin books. And so that sort of took off for me. And I just loved all of the books you read as a child. Like I remember in the second grade, our teacher, who was this, attractive blonde lady who I probably had a crush on, she read Super Fudge to us every day,
Oh
by
wow.
Judy Blume, and it was the best part of the day,
Yeah.
and then after that, all the Encyclopedia Brown books and Beverly Cleary, and then I think in terms of being a writer, I read To Kill a Mockingbird as a sophomore in high school, and that was a big moment. I remember just being blown away by that book, and also read a bunch of John Steinbeck then, Mice and Men, East of Eden, The Grapes of Wrath, and loved the way he wrote. I really liked Steinbeck's style as opposed to like Charles Dickens' style. You read all these different writers then that are so wonderful, and I love Steinbeck because it was just simple and it got to the plot faster, and that was just I thought his writing was kind of more commercial, so to speak, than maybe Dickens, who was beautiful and the details were great. I just kind of got lost in some of that, and so and then I think for me, when I got to college, there was a creative writing class offered my senior year, and I had gotten all my major requirements. And by that point, I journaled a little bit as a senior in high school, and I just kind of enjoyed it. And so I thought it would be fun to take that class, which I did. And I wrote 4 short stories, which were terrible. I mean, they were very unsophisticated stories and written by someone who had not experienced much life, but it stuck with me. And when I got to law school, I guess towards the end of law school, beginning of my career as a lawyer, I read Stephen King's book On Writing, which I think has probably inspired a whole generation of
Oh
writers.
yeah.
And I think what makes his book so great is how practical it is, and just how, like, he sort of just takes the chains off and says, you can do it, just do it, and
Mhm.
the advice is very practical. And I around that time I read a book by somebody, and I don't even remember the name of it or the author, but it wasn't very good, in my opinion. It's very subjective, but I read it, and you read some books and they're great and wonderful, and you're like, how could I ever write something as wonderful as that? But then I read this book and I was like, gosh, if this book can be published and can smell so good, and it's a lot of these details of this particular event are not right, maybe I should give it a shot. And so I had the idea for the professor in my head, and I sat down and wrote the prologue, and that started the process for me.
When you're writing, about how long does it take you when you get that first nugget of inspiration until you write the end? Um, how long does it take you to complete a book?
It's evolved over time. With the professor, it probably took 2 years to write the first draft, and 8 years to get published. Now my process is a lot more streamlined. I'll write the synopsis, which is normally around 10 or 15 pages, and then I normally write the first 50 pages pretty fast. They're normally a mess though, and they have to go back and be fixed. One of the hardest parts about being a writer is getting to the end and not fixing the things that are broken before you. I mean, you have to, for me, I have to get to the end. And because once I get there, a lot of what I've written will be okay, and I can fix the things that aren't. But now it's more like, with the Mediator, I probably wrote it over 6 weeks, the first draft.
Oh
The
wow.
whole process took about 4 months, from start to the end of like the developmental edit. I guess it still takes about 6 months because we do a copy edit and proofread, but the actual story writing is a lot faster now. And
Yeah.
it's I'm writing the sequel to the Mediator right now, and a lot of it, the first 100 pages probably took 6 to 8 weeks. The last like 250 pages took about 12 days, because I knew where I was going and I had the time to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And the faster you can write the first draft, the better. And so that's kind of my process now.
How many completed unpublished works do you have, like on your hard drive?
Gosh, so I mean, I don't know that I have an unpublished work of a book that didn't eventually get published, but
Yeah.
the first draft of The Professor is so vastly different than what actually happened, what actually was published, it almost feels like it was, a complete rewrite, so was Between Black and White. So was the first draft of The Wrong Side, the second book in the Bo Stevens Haynes series. I had to basically rewrite it because I wasn't satisfied with it. And so, I would say probably three or four,
Yeah.
and they go through a lot of editing, particularly in the early books when I was kind of learning.
Yeah.
So on your About You page, you have a picture of a puppy, a little chocolate lab. I have one too. So was that your first lab, and what did you learn about that? Because oh my gosh, I'm not familiar.
We had a chocolate lab named Bama that we had for 12 years, and she was the sweetest dog, but she chewed everything. She ate it. I mean, she was a vacuum cleaner of food, and probably the greatest athlete I've ever been around. She could move so fast. And now we have a second black lab named Bryce Young Bailey. And he is a holy terror. He is the sweetest dog. He never meets a stranger, but he is very difficult. Even at 3, 4 years old, it's hard to keep him like contained where he doesn't destroy everything. So
Yeah.
they're sweet dogs, but they're a lot.
My last night I cooked barbecue chicken for supper, and there was one thigh left, and I didn't want it for to lunch today. And Julie's her stomach's been bothering her, so she didn't know whether she wanted to take it to work or not. She said, "Well, just throw it away." I was like, "Okay." So I get a piece of aluminum foil that I cooked it under, wrapped it up and put it in the garbage can. And my lab decides that he is going to go digging. He doesn't dig, he sticks his head into the bottom
Yeah,
of the garbage can and eats the chicken thigh. And
right,
Julie, my wife, she's a nurse in the ER, and she's one of these people that is, how can I die? How do you die in 10,000 ways or whatever?
right,
And now the dog ate the chicken bone, and she is worried to death. And
right,
but he eats everything in his path.
right.
And he's 2.5, 3 years old, so he's still a puppy. He's got
Oh
enough
yeah.
nonstop energy. And she was like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" I said, "We're going to watch him. That's all we can do is watch him." I was like,
It's hard to keep him out of the trash.
it
I have the
is,
same
and
problem.
it's like the poor thing never gets fed. He never, we don't ever feed him. You
Right,
know, he doesn't eat 100 pounds of food every 2 weeks.
right.
That's you know. But yeah, they're true gems. Those labs, I tell you,
Yeah.
my goodness, they are true gems to have. Your social media, how can people contact you or follow you on social media? What's your handles, and what platforms are you on?
So my website is robertbaileybooks.com, and all of the different social media stuff is on the website. I have a Facebook page that's just Robert Bailey Books, and also a Instagram, page that's the same. And I think my Instagram handle is rbailey32, but I
Okay.
think if you just searched Robert Bailey Books, it would probably pop up.
Okay.
And I've got I don't even know what you call it anymore. I guess it's an X page or a Twitter page. I'm not on that a lot, but
Yeah.
I have it too. That used to be a lot bigger, but now it seems like it's more Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
But
If people want signed copies, is there a bookstore local to you that you sign and they ship, or how do you have that available?
so
Is that
in
available?
Huntsville, the Snail on the Wall bookstore is a independent store. It's run by my friend Lady Smith and Christina Tabarot, and they are, they have a brick and mortar store, a location on Wellman Avenue. It's a super store, but they also will ship signed copies
Okay.
anywhere in the world. And I've had books shipped anywhere in the United States, and they've shipped them overseas. And she lives real close to me, so the signing process for me is super easy.
Good deal.
And so Lady is normally where the Snail on the Wall is normally where I direct folks to.
Okay.
There's also a nice store in Madison called Blue Apple Books, and they are also a good. They carry all my books as well.
And also, I got an email last night from Liz. I think it's Liz. Let me pull it up. Or Liza, rather, Liza. And because you're working with a couple of different firms this go round, and you're going to be on tour with this book.
Yes.
Can you tell us some of the cities are you going to
So
be in?
it's going to be a really fun tour, the biggest one I've ever had. We're going to start in Maryville, Tennessee, and then on May the 8th. And then on Sunday, May the 9th, we're going to Houston, Texas for Murder by the Book. On Monday, we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and at Virginia Highlands for a bookstore there. I can't remember the name of the store. Tuesday, which is officially release day, we'll be at the Snail on the Wall in Huntsville. Wednesday, the Page and Palette in Fairhope. Thursday, the Rock in Sheffield, Alabama, that's put on by the Sheffield Public Library. And then on Friday, I'm taking a rest day. And then Saturday, we go to Maryland. Sunday, New Jersey. I think Monday, I can't remember. I think Monday's Long Island. Tuesday's New York City. Wednesday is Connecticut. Thursday is Boston, Massachusetts. And then we take a little bit of a respite after that. And then we'll ramp up after Memorial Day with more events in Waco, Texas. And always have an event in Pulaski in June.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure we're adding them right now, but the first 2 weeks is about as intense as I've ever had.
Yeah, I noticed that last night when I looked at it. I said he's going to be busy.
And I'm
Um,
not a world traveler, so this is going to be like Forrest Gump, rides a train for the first time. It's going to be, I ought to do like a book on these travels because
yeah,
I don't
it-
travel like easy. I'm kind of an idiot.
last year we had the honor of meeting you. We had the honor of meeting you at BocherCon last year,
Right.
in New Orleans. Will you be in Calgary for BocherCon, or are you going to skip Canada?
So I just because it's my son's senior year at Alabama, and I think it's conflicts this year with my other son's parents' weekend at TCU. I'm not sure, but I haven't booked BoucherCon yet in Calgary. That is harder for me to get to.
Yeah,
New Orleans was a whole lot easier. Like the last 2 years, it's been like New Orleans and Nashville, which I've
yeah.
been to, but well, those are super easy for me. I don't mind getting in an airplane, but that's a little far for me at
Yeah.
least. But
I,
I love BoucherCon. It is a fun conference.
we went she's gone a couple of years. Last year was mine and my wife's first one, but I think we're going to have to skip it this year too, and we'll pick it up next year. I think it's in Philadelphia or
Oh, that'll be
Washington,
good.
so we'll
Okay.
we'll hit it again next year. So, you've got a new book coming next year. Can you talk anything about the new book yet, or is it
So the
still
new book will be the sequel to The Mediator. It'll be
okay?
the second book in the Max Ringo series. And it will feature Max kind of she'll still be a mediator in the book, but she will have sort of a forced return to the courtroom where she'll have to deal with being a lawyer again, which
Ah,
I think is has been a lot of fun to explore, like a former, like true, like Jedi, like finding her form again and getting involved in another sort of impossible type case where she's sort of having the strings pulled by someone
I
else.
got
Kind
you.
of a lot of the things that happen at the end of the Mediator sort of spill over into this book, which right now is tentatively called The Judge. I'm not sure if that title will stick, but I like it, but we'll
Yeah.
see. So,
Well, we do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us. Thanks again to Mr. Bailey for joining us. Thank you to Megan Beatty Communications for setting everything up. Those wonderful ladies there are amazing. Um, and his book, The Mediator, is available May 12th from Thomas and Mercer, a part of Brilliance Publishing, Amazon Publishing. You have to throw all those in there. um, but thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you in the future. A second.
uh,